Hey guys, Pawns here on the PBE, here to tell you guys about everything you may have wanted to know about Camille, and possibly some things you didn't care about at all. So anyway, we're going to talk about her abilities, some of the weird nuanced things about her kit, her builds, roles, stuff like that, and sort of my opinions on that. But let's start off with the abilities first. So Q, you might have seen in some early videos like mine and maybe some other people's talking about dealing 1,000 true damage with her Q. That's not really a thing anymore. Basically, the easy way to get that was to get an Infinity Edge and like a damage item, and you were just kind of dealing out of nowhere 1,000 true damage. You can still technically deal 1,000 true damage, but you've really got to stack the crap out of your AD now. It's no longer like a free Trinity Force thing. So that's this guy's damage here. That dealt about 800, I think 818 true force, which is true damage, which is still phenomenal. That's like a lot of damage, but I'm fairly stacked with the AD. I'm level 18, and it's not just get an Infinity Edge and do it anymore thing. So I guess it was I've done the build. It wasn't like super good. The Trinity Force build is just as good, if not better. But I guess it was just deemed sort of weird and cheap to be able to deal that much damage kind of out of nowhere. So that was that. Yeah, I got nerfed. Next. The W. On my notes here, I've written down W kind of sucks. Now, that's an oversimplification. It doesn't suck. But it's not as good as people might think. It's a bit of a trap skill. Like, I've seen people say I should max W and stuff like that. Generally speaking, you don't want to do that. While you're fighting stuff like this, usually it's actually a DPS decrease to start charging your W because of the long charge time. Because you can't attack or really do anything or be resetting on your W. Or your Q, anything like that, what's going on. What it's more so useful for is just kind of running people down. Like it's kind of almost like a finisher where they're trying to get away. Or just kind of this little extra thing, like let's say your E is on cooldown, just to get close to them and finish them off with an extra auto or something like that. Alternatively, you can mix things up a bit. You can use it like while you're waiting for your second Q to come up. Or alternatively, just kind of as a periodic sort of sustain, really. Just like, let's say you get kind of low and you're in lane and you can Q, or rather you W a wave, you get some of your life back, because it does, if you hit people with the outer part of the cone, you do get life back. So essentially, I kind of think of it as almost like a crappier Darius Q, in a sense. It definitely has a different function, but let me show you what I'm talking about with like the Q reset W thing. So let's say I'm going to auto Q, and then while it's charging up the second part, then I hit people with the W, then I get the second part of the Q. Now again, especially if you have someone ulted, you're probably better off just auto-attacking them when you're at melee range like that. But let's say someone backs off after you Q them and they've built a little bit of distance and you can't quite get to them. It's good to nail them with that and just kind of, then you can get caught up to the person and hit them with the second part of the Q. Because that's where your big damage is the charged version of the Q, the whole flippy kick thing that looks kind of like a kick version of Shoryuken to me. Anyway. How the E works, let's talk about this a bit. So basically you cast it at a wall, and then you can sit there for up to a second, then you jump off. If you don't do anything, you just kind of fall off the wall and nothing happens. But yeah, it's basically a second cast, wait, or you can just go immediately. Either works. If you do it towards an enemy, or an enemy champion, for example, let's go up to Misfortune here. I got pretty high mobility. So if I were to cast it at Misfortune, it will increase the range. And also, it won't, like, follow her or anything. It'll basically just kind of go to where she was. So if Misfortune had moved there, she would have just, she didn't have the minions. No, got it for the minions, alright. So if Misfortune had just, like, moved backwards there, I would have basically just jumped in a straight line that way regardless. And I just would have been stuck there and she would have been over there. So you got to be a little bit careful how you use it. Because if you don't land it, you don't get the attack speed bonus or the stun or anything. So, yeah, especially if you're thinking of engaging with your ult on that, it might be worth considering, oh, I flubbed the E, just back out and try again. Especially if you have lots of CDR, which you really should be getting. You get your abilities back up pretty quickly. So, oh, right, her ult. Now, her ult is interesting. Like, it says, let's see now. Yeah, cannot escape by any means for 4 seconds. They literally mean cannot escape by, well, not exactly literally, but almost literally any means whatsoever. So, for example, I haven't seen this, but I know Riot has said you can't Malphite ult out of it. And basically, if Malphite can't ult out of it, means you can't really do anything. You can't teleport out of it because teleport You can actually start casting teleport in the ult. At least I've seen people do it. But the thing is, teleport takes so long that, like, the duration of it, let's say, like, for whatever magical reason, Camille stops attacking you, doesn't interrupt your teleport, and, you know, doesn't CC you or anything, the teleport channel time lasts so long that the ult's going to run out anyway, so it's completely irrelevant. It'll actually interrupt your ult if you jump onto the person, though, so keep that in mind. The only thing I've actually seen you get out, or that gets out of the Camille ult, is when Tahm Kench eats an ally and then starts to leave. But the thing is, as soon as this, because essentially they become a non-entity on the map, like they're sort of this untargetable thing. But the thing is, as soon as they reappear on the map again, like they get spat out or whatever, they get, like, just kind of shunted back into the ult. I don't know if that's intentional or what's going on there. It was one of the weirder things I've seen in terms of the interactions. But it's a super niche case, so I wouldn't think about that too much. I have not seen anything else get out of the ult. However, you can block the ult. For example, Fiora's riposte, whatever, that'll actually, when you jump onto her and she's channeling her E, that will actually block the ult, and since the ult doesn't even go off. Camille will still jump to Fiora, but the ult just doesn't happen, essentially. Spell shields will do the same thing. For example, Sivir's spell shield, that'll block it. I believe Banshee's Veil should probably block it as well. I'm not 100% certain about Morgana. That I have not actually checked, so I'm not certain about that one. But if I were to guess, generally speaking, looking at how all these other shields and, like, things function, that should block the... if I were to guess, it would block the ult. But, you know, don't... That's just me guessing. Don't take that as gospel or anything. Aside from that, what do we have here with the... I guess that kind of does it for the ult. Yeah, you can't get out of it. No flash, no nothing. Next, let's talk a little bit, I suppose, about her builds and whatnot. So, basically, the one truth to her builds is Trinity Force. You pretty much always want Trinity Force. There's some minor exceptions I can talk about in a second, but Trinity Force is just too good. The kit works fantastically well with her. It's got CDR. You know, she can double proc the Trinity Force thing with her... why don't we just do this?
You and I will end this now.
You can basically, you know, continuously proc the Trinity Force because of all the resets. Oh, right, I should mention this. Trinity Force deals true damage. Or rather, you can get the Trinity Force damage to deal true damage. A lot like how you can convert Trinity Force damage into magic damage with Nidalee's Q in cat form. That sort of idea, except true damage, so even better. So it's just basically everything you want on this character is in Trinity Force. The only, you know, reservation I have is that I'm not a huge fan of building into Trinity Force because, you know, the items that build into it are kind of so-so, and then you're kind of waiting for that Trinity Force spike, but, you know, it's not the worst thing ever. You can deal with it, and the Trinity Force, what I call the Trinity Force spike, is just so fantastically important on this character. It is almost night and day. Like, the instant you get that Trinity Force, you will notice this colossal power spike where you're just kind of going to go around killing anyone. And, you know, you're probably pretty good before that, but once you get the Trinity Force, it's just like, you're golden. So, yeah, Trinity Force. As I mentioned, CDR in general is very, very important to her. I would say, you know, the 20% on the Trinity Force is nice, but if possible, I would like to, you know, or whenever possible, I like to go higher. So sometimes I'll even get, like, where are they? The Ionian boots, or, you know, if I can't do Ionian boots, I'll prioritize it through other items. But, yeah. We should talk about a little bit about Death's Dance. Death's Dance is not a terrible item. It's just, you should note that the healing here, physical spells and attacks heal for 15% of the damage dealt. This is 33% effective for area effect damage. Note that basically, since her second part of the Q, which is where her huge giant spikes of damage come from, is considered true damage, it does not actually heal you for that 15%. The physical component, whatever is left of it anyway, will, but let me just go show you guys. So you'll have to actually just watch the healing numbers on the character. I'll just get damaged by Baron a little bit, and then... So I'm healing by per auto attack 50-ish damage. Here's the reset. Oops, I messed that up.
Patience is what separates good
And is that going to kill? Oh, I don't die. Okay, good. So, oh, no, you died anyway. Well, anyway, it doesn't really matter. So, yeah, you're basically, your Q reset thing just is not going to heal you for very much. Aside from that, what else do we need to talk about here? Oh, right, tank Camille. Don't do it. The build is garbage. That's a bit of an oversimplification, but it is terrible in lane. You're just not going to be nearly as effective as you should be. And here's the thing, like, it'll eventually scale into something quite nice, like super late game when you have tons of money and tons of items and just you kind of got, like, you know, the world to work with there. You actually become super tanky, have a tolerable amount of damage if you at least build Trinity, and then it's like pure tank. If you go like pure tank, that's pretty bad. But generally speaking, yeah, it's better for you to be good early and be late as opposed to crap early and okay late game. I mean, it's kind of funny how survivable and mobile you are. You can generally get in one person, survive their entire team, and get out. But again, it's not worth doing. Aside from that, whatever the new defensive tree mastery, the Colossus one, the max tier thing, that actually does work on her. By the way, you can proc it with her E. It's just her E because that has a stun component on it. But yeah, that's it. I don't like doing it, so I wouldn't recommend it. I much prefer getting an early damage spike with Thunderlords. But it's just me. Also, the trees in general just work better with her. The offense and the utility one. Next, what's next in my notes here? Jungle. Jungling is bad on her. It is not the worst thing ever. I consider it garbage simply because her lane is so good, and it's just a waste to not use her laning phase. But her clear is pretty so-so. She's really bad against like multiple target camps, especially early, like, or even just into the mid game. For example, stuff like the chicken birds, the raptors here, the Krugs. Now you can get a relatively early Tiamat to deal with it, but then you have to start asking yourself the question, well, if I need a Tiamat to like do the jungle effectively, should I even be doing this character at all? Why don't I just, play her in lane where I can get a normal build? Because especially with a character like this, where her lane is so good, and on top of that, she has a very expensive build. Getting Trinity Force, and remember I was talking about the Trinity Force spike? Trinity Force spike is so powerful that you just don't want to delay it. And the lane will allow you sort of the fuel and the money to get there, whereas jungle, you're just kind of languishing and in poverty a lot of the time, and it's dependent on snowballing, getting lots of ganks and stealing, kills from your lane. It looks like my minions are going to end the game, which is fine because we're just talking about builds right now. But yeah, it's just a case of why do it when you could play her in lane. She doesn't have issues there. Now, granted, this stuff can change. For example, PBE Echo was fantastically, well, he's pretty overpowered. And there was really no reason to take him into jungle because you just get into lane and you just get a horrendous amount of money and all that in lane. So there's no reason to take Echo in jungle. Now, Jungle Echo sort of became kind of a thing after some nerfs and whatnot. But, I mean, it's a more extreme example of that because Echo, I think, actually did the jungle better than she did. So yeah, there you have that. What else do we have here? Okay, well, the game's ending here, so let's talk about my personal build. Personally, as I said, you may have gathered by now that Trinity Force is core. Aside from that, a pseudo-core item for me is Sterix Gauge. So I go Trinity Force, Sterix Gauge. You guys know about presumably the Sterix Gauge, Trinity Force interaction. If you don't, I could explain in the comments or something. But yeah, I like to do that, although Sterix Gauge is not an always item like Trinity Force is. It's just kind of like Sterix Gauge is the general item in terms of this sort of... I've gone beyond the core. Here's the situational part. Sterix Gauge tends to fit most contexts well, but there are situations where I might want to go... what's that other item called? Ravenous Hydra or second, or sometimes Knight's Edge. Knight's Edge, I think it was the new item, because for the spell shield, stuff like that. Again, from there it's situational, but it will involve at least a damagey item in some way. Sort of tanky, sort of damagey, sort of like... again, depending on the game, do I want to go full damage at this second item point, or do I want to kind of go to a halfway point item like Sterix Gauge, which has a defensive component and an offensive component. And then beyond that, there's a lot of situational things you can do. You have to kind of look at the context of the game and sort of build from that point on. There is another build that was somewhat okay the one time I did it, which was the pure bruiser build, which was things like Black Cleaver, Titanic Hydra. Again, I would mix Derek's Gauge into that. I think the time I did it, I did, what the hell was that thing called? Frozen Mallet, which I didn't really like. Frozen Mallet, incidentally, is a redundant item. You already have such good chase down that basically no one gets away from you anyway. Frozen Mallet is completely unnecessary. Anyway, the Bruiser HP-ish sort of build was pretty good. It wasn't... I don't think it was as good as Trinity Force, but it was nice. You had a lot of survivability, and your damage wasn't compromised too much. I was still just kind of destroying people. Now, the problem was I was so fed in the one game I tried it that it's hard to gauge, and it is the PB, which makes things, you know, very difficult to assess. But, again, it's a bit of a gimmicky build. You could probably get away with it. I would just personally go the Trinity into something build because it's just so fantastically good. Anyway, that sort of covers my thoughts on the champion, sort of the intricacies of what's going on with the kit and whatnot. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those in chat, like something I didn't cover. I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff that I didn't cover, which I could have talked about, but, you know, I've been talking a while, so we're going to cut it off here. But, yeah, anyway, that's Camille. Keep in mind, once again, this is PBE, so some of the stuff could change. Again, I sort of hinted at that with the example of Echo, where he got nerfed and things, you know, how he gets built and stuff just changed over time. So again, keep that in mind, early Camille stuff. I actually expect her to probably get nerfed. She seems kind of good right now, or more nerfed than she's already been. Well, it wasn't even like a super hard nerf. Like, it was the only thing they nerfed was the Q true damage thing, which again I also mentioned. But yeah, that's it for now. Thanks for watching, everyone, and goodbye.